He actually thinks I'm objecting to something he put on his show about me. I have no idea what you put on your show about me. I couldn't care less, sir. I was mocking you for trying to lecture journalists on how to do journalism based on your own failure to speak truth to power. That's what you failed. You only did it when you knew your candidate was going to cost you up and down.
Megyn Kelly just turned Hollywood into a courtroom, and let's just say George Clooney and Robert De Niro are now sitting in the defendant's chair without even realizing the trial had begun. What went down? Only one of the most scorching critiques of two of Tinseltown's most untouchable icons, delivered not with a whisper, but a megaphone. It was Demolition Day, and Megyn didn't bring a gavel. She brought a wrecking ball. Clooney and De Niro, once immune to criticism thanks to their Hollywood sainthood, now find themselves the subject of an epic takedown that's more potent than anything served up on the red carpet. And no, this wasn't gossip. It was a calculated, blistering indictment of performative morality, hypocrisy dressed in Armani, and the cult of celebrity activism. Prepare yourself. This isn't just a takedown. It's a full-blown roast with receipts.
She and George get together and they start navel-gazing on stage about themselves, of course, and their vaunted profession, and how bad, how just terrible the media is, and had the following exchange.
What we do in this is we talk about the responsibility of journalists to hold truth to power, right? That's our goal. And so if you're doing that, and we don't tell people what to think when we show that montage at the end, for instance. You see Megyn Kelly, she's who's come out and said, I'm not a journalist. I didn't say I was a journalist.
Imagine it, Megyn Kelly, former Fox News heavyweight, media disruptor, and unfiltered truth teller, marching into the glitter-drenched echo chamber of Hollywood and tossing a grenade squarely into the laps of George Clooney and Robert De Niro. It's not a crossover episode, it's a cultural collision. Clooney and De Niro, the industry's beloved elder statesmen, have long skated by on reputations polished to an impossibly high sheen. Clooney is the suave humanitarian, De Niro, the grizzled truth teller. But here comes Megyn, armed not with gossip but a flamethrower aimed directly at the pedestal. The image of David taking on Goliath doesn't even cut it. This was David showing up with a media dossier, sharp wit, and a truckload of uncomfortable questions. And the most shocking part, not a single punch pulled.
Robert De Niro, who's got a severe case of the TDS, is in confront right now, as all the muckety-mucks are. And he's very unhappy about what Trump is doing to try to keep American filmmaking in America by slapping tariffs on foreign-made films so that he can basically try to force people to make them domestically again for the American audience that they're meant to serve. And here's what De Niro said on Tuesday.
America's Philistine president has had himself appointed head
Philistine.
of one of our premier cultural institutions.
Let's start with George Clooney, the eternal silver fox, the man who somehow manages to ooze charm, intellect, and a world-saving aura all before his morning espresso. He's the guy who smiles next to world leaders, hugs starving children with camera crews conveniently nearby, and delivers monologues about justice that sound like they were penned by United Nations speechwriters. He's played the role of Hollywood's conscience so convincingly that many stopped questioning whether the act ever ends. He's the walking prototype of the celebrity saint, an Oscar-winning, espresso-sipping savior who floats between refugee camps and Cannes galas with the same poise he brings to red carpets. But Megyn Kelly isn't swooning. She's pointing at the smoke machines behind the curtain and saying, "Are we really buying this performance?"
Because I was Wendy Burcham doesn't make me actually Wendy Burcham and capable of speaking about what it's like to be married to Mr. Burcham or a shop teacher. But George Clooney is now starring on Broadway in Good Night and Good Luck. I guess at the end of this show, he turns around and looks at the audience and offers a lecture on how journalism is imploding, and this is why, I gather, he was profiled on 60 Minutes.
Megyn isn't buying the Clooney mythology for a second. To her, Clooney isn't a modern-day saint. He's the result of a carefully crafted PR operation dressed in humanitarian cosplay. She calls out the glaring contradiction that sits at the heart of his public persona, the man who warns about carbon emissions while logging more flight miles than an airline CEO. Climate change speeches followed by private jet rides to climate galas? That's not advocacy, that's branding. And the yachts? Oh yes, they're there too, bobbing on turquoise waters while Clooney preaches sustainability. It's not just hypocrisy, It's designer hypocrisy, curated and mass distributed to audiences who want their activism with a side of martinis and good lighting. While Clooney lectures the world, Megyn points out he's doing it from the cockpit of a Gulfstream with a double espresso in one hand and a tailor-made script in the other.
You guys know Phil Wegman. He's a buddy of mine, wonderful
Yeah, I
White
like
House
him.
correspondent
Real
for Real Clear Politics. He's a serious journalist, right? And he, quote, tweets the press release and he says, one of the speakers will be Robert De Niro. My hand to God, my first thought was, good for Phil. This is funny. This is a good, funny joke. It's nice to see Phil let his hair down. And then I was like, wait a minute, Phil wouldn't make this joke in this situation. And I still couldn't believe it was real. I am absolutely flummoxed. That is the dumbest move that I've ever seen a presidential campaign make in my entire life.
Kelly, Clooney's global crusades have all the flair of a high-budget marketing campaign. Lots of sizzle, little substance. She compares his activism to a well-produced TED talk. Emotional music, perfect lighting, and just enough substance to make you feel inspired without ever getting uncomfortable. That's the Clooney brand, clean, controlled, and never too messy. He funds films that dip a pinky toe into political issues, but rarely dive deep enough to make real waves. They're polished, presentable, and engineered for applause rather than impact. And while he's posting about global injustice from some chic European villa, Megyn's calling out the glaring gap between his online virtue and his offline extravagance. You want to talk about inequality, she jabs. Try doing it without champagne in hand at a charity auction that costs more than most Americans make in a year. Ouch.
You went to Darfur, that's great. What about our guys? Because I never saw you at a Tunnel to Towers fundraiser, at a gathering for our Navy SEALs, and I've been to many of them. I never saw you at any of the public appearances that I've attended where our injured soldiers are just back from war, seeking a helping hand. I guess you never saw the interviews I've done of the Medal of Honors winners. They weren't very interesting to you, like Dakota Meyer. You didn't want to.
And then we pivot to Robert De Niro, the icon, the legend, the man whose face alone can silence a room. De Niro has long basked in the glow of being Hollywood's resident straight shooter, a no-nonsense guy who tells it like it is. But Megyn's not dazzled by the glare of that legacy. She sees a man who's become addicted to outrage, offering the same recycled rants at every opportunity like he's stuck on repeat. His public appearances have morphed into dramatic tirades, loud, emotional, but increasingly hollow. Megyn likens his political outbursts to shouting at clouds. Noisy, dramatic, and ultimately ineffective. Behind the tough guy facade is a man who's traded substance for sound bites, becoming more caricature than crusader.
Hypocrisy is alive and well amongst these sanctimonious leftists. From Kimmel to De Niro to Stephanopoulos, they want you to believe they're better than you, more virtuous, more decent. But we all know the truth. They lie. They sin. They do the very things they accuse you of and the things that they say they would never do. Evil things. Like try to destroy people based on feigned outrage from which they spare their own side. Or playing politics.
She doesn't stop there. Megyn accuses De Niro of chasing headlines, not principles. Every new political movement, every trending hashtag, De Niro's there, megaphone in hand, ready to proclaim his latest moral decree. But what's behind the curtain? Business ventures and movie roles that don't always align with the ideals he publicly shouts about. De Niro's activism, she suggests, is less about justice and more about relevance. The once formidable voice of gritty authenticity has become a kind of activist pinball, bouncing between causes with the precision of a man more concerned about staying in the limelight than actually changing it. And when he's not tweeting like a 22-year-old activist, he's investing in ventures that raise eyebrows. De Niro's outbursts, once bold, now read more like grumpy man theater. The audience is clapping, but nobody's listening.
Garbage outside today. Robert De Niro, officially sent by the Biden campaign, makes himself look like an idiot and reminds us why Trump is so popular.
It's so stupid. It was colossally stupid. You're going to send somebody to go speak outside of the Trump trial. Make it someone who's universally beloved, like a Michelle Obama. You know, she's not universally loved. She's not loved on the right. But I'm saying, like, at least within the left and the center left, and maybe even some center righties. Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. he is like example number one of Trump derangement syndrome.
That brings us to the underlying theme in Megyn's critique, the performative gloss that covers Clooney and De Niro's careers like a Hollywood filter. On the surface, both men appear as paragons of virtue, but look closer, and the contradictions begin to crawl out. Clooney's filmography, for all its social messaging, includes a handful of head-scratchers that feel more like vanity projects than statements of conscience. And De Niro, the man who built a career playing rebels and rule-breakers, now cowers behind pre-approved talking points and safe outrage. Both have mastered the art of appearing engaged without ever putting themselves in a position where real accountability is required. It's theater, Megyn argues, a performance dressed up as principle.
So I'm moving to Canada if he wins, and he's never going to leave the White House if he wins. We're going to have Trump forevermore. I mean, hello, I hate to break it to you because I realize you're advanced age too, Robert, but people die. So he will leave. One way or the other, he's going to go. And in the not too distant future, even if Trump says he shouldn't have to. But in any event, he didn't do that the last time, Paul. Can you really picture a scenario in which Trump is more determined to hold on to power than he was at the last time in 2020, going into 2021? And what did he do ultimately? He left. He did leave. He did it under protest. He was a baby about it. He pouted and then some.
De Niro's tough guy legacy hasn't aged well in Megyn's eyes. Behind the gruff scowl is a selective silence on matters that hit too close to his Hollywood home. He plays warriors on screen but avoids the inconvenient battles in real life. His roles shout truth to power, but his actions whisper compromise. And Clooney, with all his white teeth activism, somehow never stumbles into the darker corners of Hollywood corruption. It's not a coincidence. It's strategy. They've both become masters at talking around issues while carefully avoiding the messiness that real moral leadership demands. Megyn paints a picture of two Hollywood titans who are far more comfortable dictating moral lessons to the masses than turning that same scrutiny inward.
Ask me about my recent dust-up with George Clooney, who rather than focusing on his waning acting career is commenting on yours truly and my journalism. And I had a little response to him on the show the other day, and here's that exchange when that came up.
Don't on your show also shy away from controversy. I saw that you addressed George Clooney's comments. Why did you feel the need to respond?
Oh, because it's too delicious not to. Honestly, George Clooney trying to advise me on how to practice journalism. Take care, honey. Okay, you know what? He should call me up. I would love to talk to him about it. He's obviously got thoughts on me. So let's do that. That'll be fun. So, Mark, it was basically a night of antagonism.
This is where Megyn Kelly breaks away from the gossip mill and into genuine critique. She's not throwing shade for fun. She's dissecting a system, a machine, a Hollywood ecosystem that rewards style over substance, hashtags over hard work. Clooney and De Niro are symbols of a wider sickness, a celebrity culture obsessed with image and allergic to introspection. She's the outsider who doesn't need to protect the brand, who can walk into the velvet-lined room and say the uncomfortable thing out loud. While the rest of the media tiptoes around these sacred cows, Megyn swings the barn door wide open. And it's not just for ratings, it's for accountability. She's asking the questions no publicist wants to answer, and she's not waiting for permission.
The past 20 years interviewing people like Suzette Kelo, who owned the little pink house that got seized by her local government, declaring government domain, a decision that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, like the cake baker in Colorado, who didn't want to bake a gay wedding cake because it violated his religious beliefs. Oh, and by the way, also the gay couple he offended. People like triple and quadruple amputees back from Iraq and Afghanistan. What did you do to help the
Clooney and De Niro, for all their accolades and adoration, are now under the microscope. Their reputations, so meticulously cultivated, suddenly look fragile under Megyn's searing analysis, and their silence, deafening. There are no witty comebacks, no rebuttals, no carefully scripted statements, just the sound of polished facades cracking. That silence speaks volumes. It suggests not strength but fear. A fear that the jig might be up. Because Megyn Kelly didn't just throw punches, she threw light. And under that light, the truth isn't quite as glamorous as the Instagram filter would suggest. What happens next? Maybe nothing. Maybe Clooney and De Niro slink back into their mansions, retool their next PR moves, and wait for the spotlight to drift. But the damage is done. The illusion has been punctured. And thanks to Megyn Kelly, we're all seeing the cracks a little more clearly. The age of untouchable celebrity activism is wobbling, and the reckoning is just getting started.